Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Streaming Alchemy Show. I'm John Mahoney, and on today's show, we're going to be taking a look at how to do remote lessons with gear that most people have. So, hopefully, remote lessons in a budget friendly way. So, uh, thank you everyone for joining us. And probably the best place to get started with all this would be to look at some of the gear that I'm talking about that we may be able to use to do this. So the first thing would be a laptop, and this could be either a Windows or a Mac laptop. We're going to be using free and open source software that's available online. So we'll be looking at OBS, and we'll be looking at another application called EasyCast, which will allow us to send the screen from a iPad into the production to give us one more way to create interactive style content. So, what this will ultimately look like will be something where we'll do a set of lessons with different types of formats. So, they could be targeted at different age groups and with different levels of interactivity connected to it. So, the first place to get started as we look at this will be digging a bit into OBS and some of the concepts that sort of go in with OBS. OBS is designed around streamers. It was originally really developed with the needs of the gaming community, where people would like to stream their live gaming sessions. And it's really evolved and matured as a product. And while still free, it really is very feature rich. So let's start with looking here at the OBS interface. And there are two sections I really want you to focus on. And that's where I have something called scenes and sources, which is the section here right next to it. Now, the thing about OBS is that it works around a model where you create a scene and then you add sources into that scene. The nice thing about this is there's a simplicity in the way these things all interact. So as you add sources into a scene, they stack like layers. So the sources on top show up on top of the sources that fall below them. So if you look at what I have set up here, we're looking at the scene called Alphabet Lesson, which we will get into. And there are four sources inside of this. The first one is the frame. That's just this grayish, blackish border that we have around the entire image that we're streaming out. Below that, then, I have a teacher's camera, and I have two of them actually. And it's important because one of the things I give you the ability to do in this type of structure is to call up a full video or just have a small video. And as you can see, the way we're doing that is around the construct of these different sources being visible or being invisible. And all you need to do to make a source switch is to toggle on its visibility so I can see a source or not. You want to put up a lower third, you can toggle the visibility on, then toggle it off. So it becomes a very simple way, very Photoshop like, for how you can actually go and create these types of uh, layered scenes inside of OBS. And so what I've done here is I've created multiple scenes for each one of the lessons I want to do and added sources which contain the materials that I want, as well as some general structural things like the cameras and the frames and stuff like that. So when we think about the different types of sources that are available, uh, probably the most important one, if you're going to be doing lessons, is an image slideshow. So what an image slideshow here, and it's what we have down here where we say alphabet slides. An image slideshow in OBS is a way to take a collection of images. Let me just sort of scroll down here. I've just taken a collection of images and they act like a series of slides that I can use. So I am able, when I want to show a slide, to just pick the image I want and move through them so I can move forward and backwards. very much like a PowerPoint presentation, but now just simply around images. And these images can be anything. They could be something which is really fancy. They could also be notes that you write down on a piece of paper and take pictures with your phone camera and just load them in. So you have a lot of different options for how to create these image slideshows, but they really can become an essential piece for how you would do instruction remotely. And these things there's a lot more detail, and I'm not trying to give a comprehensive overview of OBS because this really would probably be too much for a single show. But this as a concept is something we'll use over and over again. We want new images, we can bring them in as image slideshows. The other thing that we're doing is we're also doing something where you can capture a window that's on your desktop. And this can be very useful. Let me jump over to the reading lesson here. In this case, for this lesson, we want to capture the browser that's on the desktop here. So even though you can't see it and it's sort of under everything, OBS with their Windows capture source allows you to grab these types of windows, whether they're visible or not, on your screen and display them out as a streaming source. So, again, something that can be very useful. And some of this could be around things on the web that you want to share with students, but it could also be that there are training materials or videos or other things that you want to start off with before you get into something more interactive. And that's, just a way of leveraging the resources that you would have available as a teacher or instructor to share those with your students. So the Windows capture in OBS is a great source to also leverage here. The thing, though, that makes this workable when you're trying to do this as a production is something in OBS called hotkeys. So in OBS, if you go up and you open up settings, one of the sections in settings is called hotkeys. And so they have hotkeys that you can apply, basically a single key press that can trigger an action. So they have hotkeys that you can apply globally. So these are all the things you'd want to do for, streaming or recording, things that affect the entire production you're running. But then as you scroll down, they have hotkeys now that become associated with each one of the scenes we've set up. So if you think of the arc that we just described, the scenes are individual lessons. We have sources in those scenes with the materials we need for that lesson. And now we're going to set up a series of hotkeys within each of those scenes to control the flow of the scene. So in the case where we have the alphabet slide, uh, I have uh, a hotkey that allows me to toggle on or off the full video that we showed. So if you remember when I went in there and showed the two teacher sources for the teacher webcams, the web camera we have here on this computer, we could do full screen or we could do small, and that's all this is doing. So it's toggling that on and off. So very, very simple to allow the instructor to sort of jump in and talk to the students and then back off and sort of be there as a face as they go over the material. So that's the way we set up the hotkeys inside of the alphabet lesson. We don't have any real hotkeys we use for the geography lesson, and we'll look more at that because that's a more interesting and slightly more complex setup that we have for that. Uh, the third is the reading lesson, and again, the only thing we have in the reading lesson is the ability to capture a window source and then pop the teacher's face on and off so they could interact. And then for the science lesson, uh, we have things which will just again show and hide the teacher's the teacher's face in there. So it's really very simple. We also now, as we've gone through the hotkeys we have for each one of the scenes, we also have hotkeys for things that we set up, which could be slides and slideshows here. So we have these now set up so that the alphabet slides, which will just let you go through the alphabet, have the num keys on the keypad to move forward and backwards and go to the beginning again. So again, this whole thing allows us to set this up in a way that we don't have to focus on working with the interface. We can just use our keyboards, move through the different lessons as scenes, and then control those lessons with different simple key presses. So I think that's a good introduction to OBS as a tool. But let's actually go in and talk about each one of these lessons we've set up as scenes inside of OBS. So let's close out of the hotkeys and we'll jump into what we have set up here for the alphabet lesson. So the goal in this was something that we thought could be well targeted to younger students that you may want to reach. And it provides the teacher's webcam video on screen all the time. And we think as you have younger students, having that connection, that visual connection with the instructor is probably more important to maintaining their focus on the lesson itself. But everything we have set up here now works with hotkeys. So I can move through here, and all we're doing as we move through here is transitioning between different images inside our image slideshow. And the system itself is doing this small fade transition that we have between the different letters. And because, as we talked about the way the source is stacked, because the video camera is on top of these slides, this image stays here. So even though I'm changing the images underneath all of the for all of the different letters here in this tutorial, the video stays on top. And again, because I have the ability to hide and show layers, I can toggle on the full screen video as well, which again gives me another way to more directly speak to remote students. So this hopefully as a model is very, very simple, easy to put together with just a set of images, but definitely something that could hopefully connect more with younger students. The same basic concepts, though, would apply if you go to more sophisticated subjects. So again, this is some slides. These are watermark slides from pslides.com. So definitely check them out if this is something that you're looking for source material. But the basic model is really identical. I just have pictures, and these pictures have transitions between them. So you can actually make something that is almost animated if you sort of push elements on and pull elements off as you go from image to image. You get that type of dynamic transitioning. You also have the teacher slide, so you can have the teacher look and connect in the middle of a slide to answer questions or to more directly uh, discuss a point. And that can go away. But again, something that's very straightforward for most people to put together. The next thing that we did, this starts to get into things that require a little more hands-on control as we're working with it. This is a website that we connected to that has a whole set of different interactive types of lessons that you can do with students. And if I just go over here, you can see that this lesson here is actually what's being shown inside of uh, the, the browser window. So if I click on things here, you'll now notice that as I'm interacting, this is all taking place live on screen. So this would be the sort of thing where if you had a second monitor, it could be really ideal. You could take this browser window, put it on a second monitor beside your laptop, control everything here, and still have all the tools you need uh, locally to engage with the students. And this is something that it doesn't have to be a website. It could be any application at all that you'd want to use. So if you had training materials, if you had a PowerPoint slide deck that you already had and you don't want to use images, you could do all of that using the same type of framework because this is just doing window capture as a source. So again, not terribly difficult, but could require a bit more preparation in terms of the logistics for interacting with the website and then interacting with people remotely. The last one, I think, is probably one of the most interesting and definitely could be something that you could leverage for lots of your lesson planning if you feel comfortable working with this type of setup. So, what we've done here is we've used an application that's available for free with, some limitations, but basically for everything we're going to do here, the free would work, and it's called EasyCast. And what EasyCast will let you do is take something that's on an iPad. So if you look over here right now, we have an iPad, and we are taking what's on this iPad and showing it on the screen here. And so in this setup now, we're using an application on the iPad called Show Me. And Show Me allows you to interact with your iPad and have that on the screen. So now we've just taken this and set this up with an image, Lewis and Clark's expedition across the US. But I now have the ability to go and annotate this and highlight things I want. This can be done for equally well if this were a math lesson where I wanted to do something where I'm actually solving math problems on screen. Again, this is just an iPad going into OBS using screen capture. So if you come here, let me just go over to EasyCast. You'll see that EasyCast is the window here taking the video that we have coming from the iPad and displaying it on a window on the PC, and then I'm using OBS's Windows capture to take that and bring that into the production. And the way I have this set up is that I can now have a camera, so I could be talking and going over things. I can look down, work through the iPad. It's great because with a finger, you can erase. So you can set this up so if you have something like the Apple Pencil, I can use that to write, erase with my finger. You also can have multiple things set up in advance. So, if we're talking about Lewis and Clark and I had this, I could have a whole set of slides sort of talk about their progress across the US with different individual slides. The other thing you can do with this type of application is all the iPad type things you could normally do. I can go and I could zoom in. So if I wanted to go in and talk about something specific in Louisiana, I can now just zoom right in, pop in, go in, and start to annotate and work around that. And the great thing with this is that any subject matter could be here. So I could certainly see if you were thinking about doing lessons to really use this as a template inside OBS and run all your lessons from your iPad and just change the subject matter that you're covering. And with applications like Show Me, again, another free app on the iPad. Again with limitations. So certainly, if you're going to use these and you have the ability to purchase a subscription or a just purchase the app for the enhanced features, that would definitely be something I'd encourage. But if you are just trying to work through lesson planning right now and you need applications that are free, everything we've talked about here is freely available and can be configured without a lot of technical expertise. It will require some. There will be lots of different things you'll need to do, in the preparation and setup. But it really will come down to thinking about how to build lessons around the tools you have to communicate. In some ways, what I'm showing right here is very, very sophisticated in terms of the way you can present lessons, the dynamic nature of the things you can show, and the fact that you can still stay connected with your students. You can be looking at them, taking feedback, talking with them, and then doing different types of demonstrations, different types of tutorials, and effectively have your whiteboard slash blackboard all available electronically, which gives you a lot of latitude as a teacher to run where the questioning and interest of the class is. So this is hopefully something that you can start to apply if you need to do this to the lessons that you're preparing today. So the final question in all this is, well, how do you actually create this engagement with the students? This is probably not something that is well suited to live streaming if you want to do engagement because there is a long delay between feedback that you can get from viewers and what you're showing on screen. But where this could be ideally suited would be using something like Zoom or Skype, where you can have students join a conference and you would use something like a virtual webcam to stream out uh, what you're doing as a source into as your camera source into Zoom or Skype. So definitely something that could give you a nice format for conducting lessons in a fairly controlled environment. Now, of course, you're going to have to work with whatever the regulations in your school district may be regarding using these types of public utilities like Zoom and Skype, because I know there have been some privacy concerns and other things around that may have made people want to revisit how they use those tools. But there are multiple tools like that, and the same basic model that we're talking about here should work across all of them. If it uses a webcam and can have a group of people participate, it should be able to work with the types of models we laid out here. So hopefully you found this interesting and useful. Uh, it's clearly something that probably there'll be questions on. So do not hesitate, to ask in the comments about anything that we didn't really go into in a lot of detail here. But hopefully we gave you enough ideas to think about this and potentially get started on your own. So thank you for joining us for today's show. So next week, we're actually going to sort of carry on our theme of looking at subjects that are topically relevant. Uh, next week's show is going to be focused on what are the best ways to work successfully when you're dealing with remote guests. So these can be clients, these can be panels, these can be one-on-one interviews or discussions, or it can be a mix where I have hosts coming in remotely as well as guest or panelists. So a lot to talk about there. So until next week, everybody, keep well, be safe, and I'll see you then. Bye.